In first grade, there was a girl who liked me. I think it was the first girl who ever liked me, or the first girl that I was aware ever liked me. I don't remember her name at all. I remember what she looked like. She always wore these little red jumper things. Yeah, is that even called a jumper? I don't know anything about first grade women's fashion in the 1980s. It was like a little dress, like overalls, like bibbed overalls that were red, except it's a dress instead of pants. This little girl, red jumper, red dress girl, she liked me, and she'd sit by me at lunch, and she'd try to get into all of my groups and everything in first grade. And then finally, I remember one time at recess, we were all out there playing Foursquare, and she's like, "I think you're cute. I like you." And I was like, I don't really, I guess I like you too, but not like that. And I saw a fire light in that young girl's eyes in that moment. And I will never forget that expression as weeks of adoration toward me. I mean, like interlocking fingers and putting her chin on it and tilting her head toward me when I talked in class and batting her eyes. All of that went away, and it was replaced by a deep, dark, abiding rage that she never got over. I still think it's entirely possible that she has a picture of little first grade me somewhere with my bowl cut, and that sometimes she takes like red lipstick and draws X's over my face on that thing. Because let me tell you, my friends, she went from liking me and making friendly to my biggest enemy that I had in elementary school with just that one comment I made about, "I like you too, but just not that way." Likewise, it's kind of what we're getting in Ezra chapter 4 when Cyrus the Great tells the Jews that they can go home and rebuild things. And they're like, "Great, let's do that. We got some money and everything." And they start rebuilding things and they get the foundation laid. And some people are real excited because they're young and they don't know any better. And some old people are like, "Dang, that is a much smaller temple. And it's so much smaller that they just cry." And all of that's going, but they're just going to build it anyway. And then all of a sudden along come all of these hill people to town with their saws and their hammers and their bibbed overalls. And they're like, "Let's get to work. We'd like to help too." But then the Jewish leadership under Zerubbabel, the descendant of David, are like, "How about no? How about get the heck out of here, you weirdos? No, you're not going to have any part in building this temple to our God. We alone will build it to the Lord, the God of Israel, as King Cyrus, the king of Persia, commanded us." If we're to be fair, that's a much more aggressive stiff arm than I gave that red dress girl in first grade, but boy, do both of them flip. Picking it up in verse 4 of Ezra chapter 4, this is what happens. It says, "Then the peoples around them set out to discourage the people of Judah and make them afraid to go on building. They hired counselors to work against them and frustrate their plans during the entire reign of Cyrus, king of Persia, and down to the reign of Darius, king of Persia." Now, let me just say, that is a serious level of commitment chronologically, because Cyrus, king of Persia, died in 529, 530 BC, depending on who you ask. And Darius the Great of Persia became king in 522. So you're talking about a 7-8 year grudge that these people carried on. At least at first glance, it looks like it goes on that long. What we're going to discover when we go into the very next passage is that the grudge runs for another 40, 50, 60 years after this as well. These people showed up and were like, "We want back in and we're going to help build the thing." The Jewish leadership said, "Nope, we're not doing that." And then chaos ensues for more than an entire generation of history as these people go about trying to discourage the work. And discourage here is such a weak word on my part. It's more than discourage. I guess I just inadvertently criticized the Bible because the word discourage is used in the text. But the same sentence where it says discourage gives us something a little bit darker in terms of an indication of what sort of tactics they were going to employ. Then the peoples around them set out to discourage the people of Judah. Okay, there that is. And make them afraid to go on building. Well, it's terrorism then. It's intimidation. It's threats. Now, we're going to discover as we continue to work toward the book of Esther through Ezra and Nehemiah, we're going to discover that they were having to work with a sword on their hip, that at certain points, at different phases in the project of putting Jerusalem back together, they were having to put one man on the wall with a sword for every single person who was able to do any work. And at other times, they were having to have only one hand of the workers dedicated to working because the other hand had to be dedicated to holding a sword. That's the kind of constant pressure that these people were under. So it's really at least a two-pronged attack that we see this jilted people group who went from I just love you to I completely hate you undertaking and employing. Plan number one is raw, physical, present intimidation, and that's what I was talking about so far. But plan number two is weaselly go behind your back to the king and write letters and fill out paperwork with just concern for the well-being of Persia. You know, King Cyrus, we absolutely love being your subjects, and your success is the thing we care the most about. And we, oh gosh, hate to even bring this up. I mean, with all the things you already have on your plate, it is horrible to be the bearers of bad news the way we have to be here, but we couldn't sleep at night knowing that we were aware of this great, awful thing that's being perpetrated right here in Jerusalem without you knowing about it. We just had to let you know. There are people here who are very disruptive. They have done so much damage for so long, and they are causing real problems in your name. They're waving around this sheet of paper with your seal on it. And I regret to say, I don't think they are operating within the spirit of what you had intended. It might be best to shut this thing down. And it looks like this communication didn't just go to Cyrus, but it went to all kinds of middle management types who no doubt got promoted above their ability level, as is so often the case. And these middle manager types are very afraid of making any kind of bureaucratic mistakes. They've got certain metrics they have to meet and deliver on every quarter. And so something like this is very alarming for them. And so they make bureaucratic, safe, boring, dumb mistakes, the kind of middle management, cowardly decision-making that has so grievously held back the progress of humankind for all of time, and no doubt deeply aggravated every single one of you as you listen to this, even if you might happen to be employed in middle management right now. You get it. We all know what this game is. You just throw a bunch of mud at the wall and you make a mess, and that will grind things to a halt in bureaucratic red tape. So it's a two-pronged attack, and this resistance is going to go on, and this is, again, part of the reason that we're covering all of this. It's going to go on not just here in the reign of Cyrus, which is still roughly 50 years, 45 years before the events of the book of Esther, but it's going to go on all the way through the successors to Cyrus, that being Cambyses II, who we'll learn more about later, Bardia, who reigned just very temporarily, Darius, who had a great, gigantic reign, and on into the reign of his son, Xerxes, who we think is the king of the book of Esther, and even his son, Artaxerxes. So this is one of those places where understanding this undercurrent of resistance to the Jewish people getting back on their feet, if we understand that undercurrent, if we understand that pressure, we're going to understand Esther way, way better. And we really start to get a sense of what all of that is about here in Ezra chapter 4. So in the same way, there was a little girl who seemed to really, really like me and wanted to buddy up. I don't know why. I don't know what she wanted. I don't know what she was thinking she was going to get out of me. Maybe the popularity, maybe my milk money. I don't know what she wanted, but she wanted something. And I was like, no, she didn't like me anymore. Hell hath no fury. And likewise, it looks like these enemies, these frenemies of the Jewish people during this rebuild time, they tried to get what they wanted out of the situation by sort of making nice, and when that wasn't reciprocated, they went full scorched earth nuclear meltdown for the better part of 100 years, and that is a very important social political reality that was in place during the time of Esther that we got to remember in order to fully understand the book of Esther. Golly, I like hanging out with you and doing this kind of stuff. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.